Hi there, Prairie Plant Girl here. I have this package that arrived while I was away for a few days, and I really need to get these plants in the ground. These are bare root perennials. I picked them up on sale from TT Seeds. If you're wondering where I got them, I don't know if they have any left. It's not sponsored or anything, it's just where they came from. And I'm sitting here in front of this beautiful Kansas peony. It's a little bit, the blooms are starting to finish. Oh, but they smell so good. And I love peonies. So I picked up another one here. So I have a big root here in this bag of sphagnum moss, and this is called Angel Cheeks. I believe it's kind of a creamy blush color that has some pink edging, if I remember. I ordered these before I left on holidays, so can't totally remember what it looked like, but I'll show you how to plant this peony and where we're going to plant it in a few minutes. It's going to be in this bed, but at the other end. I think it'll be stunning where I'm going to put it. Peonies are a great perennial. They're really carefree. They can last like 20 years. And once they get established, they're really tough, and they give you these gorgeous blooms. In my area here, usually, you know, from late May through June, just kind of depending on the varieties. So you can get some fern leaf peonies that are a little trickier to grow here, or you can just get these standards. They get really big. They kind of form like a shrub when they're out of bloom, and like around 3 feet tall and wide is what a lot of them top out at. I think this one's around 2 feet tall and wide, and I have another one kind of behind me. They really like sun, so you want to give them like a full sun to part sun, like at least 6 hours of sun a day. And they don't want to sit somewhere where they're going to be flooding out, especially in spring. They don't want wet roots. And something else to know is, especially if you buy a smaller peony root, it's probably going to take like 4 to 5 years to get blooms. So I'll show you a few in the yard that I've planted about, I think it was 3 years ago now, that I just purchased in a pack. I think it was a pack of like 4 or 5, and they're just a random mix. And some have started to bloom now, and most still aren't giving me blooms, but they're growing nice and healthy. And I think next year will be the year that most of them will be giving me blooms. I'll get started on planting these perennials because I want to get these roots out of the sun and into the ground, and then we'll have a look at some of the other peonies that I have in my yard. And then I also have some red shades heliopsis that I need to find somewhere to put. Okay, so I'm just going to take advantage of the sun going over a cloud to point you in this direction here, because I think it'll give you a better view of where I'm going to plant this peony. Right down in here I have a variety of some perennials and some annuals, and I'm going to move some of these things around. It's not ideal for these plants, but as long as I water them well and take care of them, they'll be fine to move, and I'd rather move them now than leave them for later. So behind me here I have some liatris. You might have remembered me planting that last year, and it's doing quite well. So these will be blooming in purple, I believe is what the liatris I put here. I have some rock soapwort, and I'll just leave this. It's a nice ground cover, and it can work its way around and kind of be like a living mulch. I don't know how well you can see, but right here I have monarda, and these are little sugar buzz bubblegum, I think. Sugar buzz grape bubblegum monarda, and I have 3 of them. So there's one here, and one here. And I'm going to take those monarda and move them forward. And I also have a couple of straw flower, and I'll pop them forward as well. There's 3 of those straw flowers, so I'll move those. And then the peony, the Angel Cheeks Peony, will go right here. And that'll look really pretty. I think it'll have the liatris up here, then the peony, which will kind of give, as this walkway comes through, it'll kind of give a little bit of a cover to the yard as you walk down this walkway. Not totally, it's only going to be around 3 feet tall when it gets mature, but it'll still give just that little bit of a kind of a fence kind of look to it to kind of make you want to come around it, I think. And then I'll put the bubblegum monarda, which is a little bit of a smaller monarda, in front of the peony, and the straw flower I'll probably just work in back with some of the other annuals back there. So my first step is going to be moving the monarda and the straw flower out of my way, and then I'll show you how I'm going to plant the peony. Okay, so I got those couple of plants moved. And like I said, not ideal to move them. Some of them I just planted this year, some had just been planted last year. But with good watering and care, they'll be just fine to be moved like that. I've also kind of pulled off some of the seed heads and things to trim the rockwort back here. And you can see it's just kind of finishing up some of its bloom. If I trim it back, it'll come back into bloom. And where this lid here is, that's the space I'm going to put the peony. It has about 45 centimeters all around, or 1.5 feet in any direction. And that should give it that 3-foot spread it's going to want later on. It won't really get that big this year. It's just going to mostly just settle in, put on roots. It'll grow a bit bigger next year, but not much, as it's still mostly settling the roots in. And the next year I'll see more leafy growth, but like I said, it takes about 4 to 5 years for them to become really established. This is a good sized root, so it might only take about 3 seasons to really get it going in the ground. So let's just pull it out of here and have a look. So I know what I'm working with here. They wrapped it in some sphagnum moss, which just helps to keep it nice and damp. So just get that out of the way. You don't want to plant that with it. So this is a beautiful peony specimen. A lot of times if you're buying, especially at just like a big box store, you won't get anything near this size, but this was, you know, from an actual grower and seed seller, plant dealer. So this is a beautiful specimen. So it has shoots coming out of multiple spots, and those spots are called eyes. And really when you're looking for a peony root, you're looking for something that has at least 3 to 5 eyes to get growth, you know, in that 3 to 5 years, like to get blooms in that 3 to 5 year range. And this one has, it looks like about 7 eyes on it. Lots of good growth coming. It needs to get put down. So when you're looking to plant your peony, you want to find the crown of the plant, and that's where kind of all these shooting spots join up with the roots. And you only want to plant it about 1.5 inches to 2 inches, which is like 5 centimeters or less below the ground. If you plant your peonies too deep, they won't bloom for you. And with peonies, because they can take so long, like so many years to actually get established and start blooming, you might not even realize you have them too deep. So if you've had peonies planted for several years and they're still not blooming or showing signs of setting buds, it might be time to have a look and see if you have it planted too deep. So let me bring this in so you know a little bit closer look. So here's your main root here coming across here, and then you can see where there's stems coming up out of the root. So hopefully you can see that there. So most of the growth points are around this level here. So I'm only going to plant it about here. Even in my cold climate, I don't want to be getting these low points that are the lowest down here. I don't want to be getting those down below 5 centimeters or they won't grow for me and bloom. So I'm going to go at about this point here, and that includes mulch in my experience. So you don't really want to have a lot of mulch around the crown of your plant anyways. You want to keep it pulled back. But if you're mulching it in the winter just to help protect it, make sure in late winter, before any growth is gone and before any growth starts to occur, because you don't want to break off these points, you're pulling that mulch back and away from the crown of the plant and exposing it so that these shoots can come up and grow and not feel like they're pushing through a lot. They don't want to expend that energy doing that, especially when they're young. And make sure that you're not ever piling things on and letting it disintegrate and, you know, create a higher soil level on it than it was planted at. So hopefully that makes sense here. But yeah, this is what it comes with. It's a root, and it's just a nice thick root. And these are all the shoots that want to grow. So I'm going to dig just kind of a shallow hole, but I'm going to dig a wide hole. I'm going to put some bone meal in it. That's all they really need, is some bone meal in early spring, usually when they're pushing growth. And then again in the fall, a little circle of bone meal around the plant is enough. You don't want to put a lot of compost or a lot of nutrients in the planting hole, because that can make for weak growth. And the same with fertilizing them. You don't want to put a lot of heavy fertilizers on your peonies, you know, or you can just make them kind of spindly and weak. Peonies often need something to hold the growth up. And after I've planted this, I will be seeing if I have a peony ring. I'm not sure if I have one available right now. If I do, I'll put it around it right now. And that way I'll know where to look for it in the spring. and look for growth so I don't plant on top of it or step on it and damage this tender new shoots when they're coming out next spring. For now, let's just get it planted before it dries out. Set it over here, get this moss that fell out of the way. Move my lid. And I'm just gonna, like I said, just dig kind of a shallow space. But wide. Now this area here was a new flower bed that I built last year, and it has a lot of fairly fresh compost that was already put in last year. So it's pretty loose already. I'm not too worried about it. I'm gonna, underneath where some of the old sod was, is a little bit more compacted, so I'm just going to kind of loosen that up. But I don't want to loosen it too deep because even though the roots to be able to go down into it, I don't want the root to sink, like the main root that I'm planting to sink, because again, we don't want it to get too deep in its hole. Okay, so a little bit of bone meal. And I'm going to put, since most of the shoots are on this one end of the root, I'm going to try and center that between the sidewalk and the edge of the grass there. So again, I'm just setting it down, and I don't want it to be too deep. So I'm just going to have a look here. This area is centered where I want it. About 5 centimeters, 2 inches is, put my finger. I'm going to just put a little bit more soil back in the hole here. There, that should be good. So it really feels wrong to me anyways to plant it that shallow, but that's what they want. And now I'm just going to cover it back over. Being gentle not to break off those growth points. I'm going to get water and water it in to make sure that the soil is all settled in, there's no air pockets, and then we'll fill in anywhere else that it needs. And then I'm going to bring the mulch back over, not onto the growth points there, but around the growing space to just help keep it moist. Okay, so I just have a very basic old peony or plant support ring here. You can get some much fancier, much more stronger, or you can get better looking peony rings, but this does the job. And I have this, so I'm going to put it in. So it's just 3 legs on a circle. They have little points, so if you're adding it to an existing peony, you could open this ring up. I can do it, it's so old. You could pull this open, wrap it around, and you could even take the legs off. They'll come off the same way. And then once you get around the plant and the leaves and stems inside, you could close it back up. So I'm just going to try and evenly space the legs, making sure that I'm not going through the root of the peony. And I'm going to put the one closer to this one side here, so that if it decides to shoot out of the end that didn't have any shoots on it, I'll have ring around those shoots. And then I'm just going to push the legs into the soil. So you can see they come off easily. I could tighten that, but I'm not worried about it. Once it's all in here, it'll stay in. Just have to get it through my tough soil that's down below. So for this year, I'll leave it quite low to the ground. As the peony grows, it may need to come up higher. But this year I'm really just, more than anything, marking this spot for next spring, and to make sure that I don't walk on it and the dog doesn't walk on it and break these stems. Really, that's all there is. Peonies just want, like I said, lots of sunshine. They don't want to be sitting in wet soil, and they just a light feed of bone meal is enough in the spring and again in the fall. Some people are very concerned about peony diseases. I haven't found that to be an issue here. I don't know if it's just that our climate is drier here. So if you live somewhere with a damper climate, you may need to, in the fall, remove all of your peony foliage and dispose of it. People say to just throw it away, not to compost it. I often don't cut my peonies back until the spring. I tend to leave my garden alone. I like to leave things like peonies that aren't buried very deep. I leave that foliage on over winter in this cold climate. I'm in zone 3, Saskatchewan, Canada. So I like to leave the foliage on and let it die back over the crown of the plant for the winter. And that, I think, just helps protect it over winter. And then I'll cut it back early spring or late winter as soon as I can get to it. Before it starts sending up shoots is the ideal time. Sometimes there's already some shoots coming and you just have to carefully cut the stems back around it. Peony foliage makes beautiful greenery for bouquets. So I often cut stems of the peony foliage for that. You don't want to cut too much because that's what's providing the energy for the roots. So you don't want to cut it way back. I try to take no more than 1/4 of the plant. Some people will say to take even less. And the foliage turns a really beautiful red color in the fall that I absolutely adore. So I think peonies, they give you that beautiful spring color in like spring, early summer, and then they give you fall color as well. And they give you just kind of a nice, almost shrubby look throughout the rest of the season that I think is very attractive. So I think they're really worth having in your yard. Peony blooms will last in a bouquet. Just pick them when they've just started to open, but they're not fully open, and that'll give you the longest vase life. Otherwise, you know, they almost live on neglect. So, and they're a long-lived perennial, so pick the spot you want them to be and pick it well, not like me. So I'm going to show you some of the places I have put some other peony roots that I planted a few years ago and how they're doing, and that'll give you an idea maybe of the growth that you can expect on your peonies. So the ones that I started at have been here for, I think, around 10 years now. They're doing really well and they're very happy. But some of the rest have just only been in the ground, like I said, for about 3 years. So let's have a look. Our first stop on the peony tour here is going to be what not to do with your peonies, but they will still grow. Now, when I planted these peonies, and there's one right here, and there's one actually behind me, I'll give you a closer look in a minute. I didn't have this, what do I always decide? This is a 9 bark, I think. It wasn't here. And I put these peonies here. I bought them. They were just an assorted mix of single blooms is what they're supposed to be. And now obviously this 9 bark has come and overgrown it. There was a lot more sun coming in back here before because I didn't have the greenhouse here, which is right kind of to your right. So yeah, I'm probably going to have to move them, which is too bad because one of them has finally started to bloom and they've really gotten to a nice size back here. But they're really just getting probably about 4 hours at most of sun. There's some morning sun that comes in. Right now it's about midday. So morning sun kind of comes in behind the greenhouse and gives them a good block of sun. And then they might get a little bit of sun in this direction, but with this 9 bark throwing these big branches out, I don't think it's getting a whole lot. But they're looking so big and healthy finally. So really, I wish I had thought about this a little more when I put them here, but I mean, your yard changes sometimes and sometimes things need to move. So I'll show you what they look like now, and I will have to be coming in and making a decision about where they're going to go in the next year, I'd say, to give them the best look. Probably in the fall is when I'll move them. That's actually what they say is the ideal time to be planting peonies, but often you'll get the bare roots available in the spring, which is what I had, so that's why I planted mine when I did. But we'll have a closer look at these so you can see the blooms are just starting on the one. So here they are a little closer up, and you can probably see these actually have tomato cages on them. I don't know how well you can see the cages because they don't fully get all the things, but these tomato cages also make a pretty good ring for peonies, and even if you cut some of the bottom rings off that are smaller so that you can sink them deeper in the ground, that works well too. But I hope you can see this is just starting to bloom, and it looks like it's going to be a really deep purpley pink color, similar to the Kansas, but these are supposed to be singles and the Kansas is a double, so it will be different. I have no idea yet what color that one is going to be. I'd really like to have an idea before I move them what colors they're going to be, but I guess that might not be an option for me. But yeah, I'll be digging these up probably this fall and moving them to a new location that's yet to be determined. But there's this one here and that one there. They're both in tomato cages. This one looks like it has the tiniest little bud maybe starting to form there, so we'll see. But I have been actually harvesting the foliage off of these a little bit hard the last couple of years for my bouquets because they're in the back of the yard, and it's just an easy grab for foliage. Okay, I'll show you another one. So the other one I have is right here. So hopefully you can distinguish the peony from everything else that's going on in this bed. I have a Weigela here. There's a honeysuckle vine in behind. There's some lady's mantle and some hostas. It's a real menagerie in this bed because this bed gets kind of funny sunlight. It gets some morning sun, it gets some afternoon sun, but it never gets like a long sustained block of sun. So I find that I can grow, even though I get actually quite a bit of sun here, the hottest sun of the day doesn't seem to hit this bed. And I find that I can grow a lot of things that are full sun and shade as long as I keep this bed wet. They all seem to be happy here. It's kind of an odd little space in my yard. But if you saw the video I just put out where I planted, what was it, something Royal Cascade, I think, clematis, it's just down at the other end of this bed. So yeah, a real combination of things going here. But this one, it's gotten to a nice size. It has a peony ring that's actually fallen over. I need to tighten that one leg up, but it's the same ring that I had on the other. And you can see it's gotten some nice size on it, but again, it's probably not getting quite the best sunshine for it. But I think it will do fine. As it gets bigger and stronger, it's going to push growth sooner and get more height. But I do think this will do well here if I just let it be and continue to take care of it in this space and not harvest the leaves too much. I have one more of these single peonies that came from the set. So I guess there was 4 in the set, because I'm pretty sure there's just the one in the next spot here. We'll show that to you real quick. So this peony, hopefully you can distinguish it right here, is almost right where those doubles are in behind. You might be able to tell there's a rose off to this side here. I think this is Felix Leclerc, but it might be a Morden, I'm not sure. But so I have, this will be a single peony. Again, I don't know the color because it was just in a mixed pack. And then I have the rose, and I have some other perennials. There's some lilies. I think there's some penstemon in here. There's hostas in here, and then more of the Kansas peonies. But this one is doing quite well here. It's grown nicely. Now this one is getting a little bit of morning sun, but a lot more of the afternoon sun. So I think you can see the difference, whereas the last one we looked at had more, it's getting more morning sun and then kind of filtered splotchy kind of afternoon sun, and this is a fuller one, and I think that's why. It's because it's getting that afternoon, that stronger sun. It's also getting more water, more consistent water here, because I'm constantly dumping and refilling the bird bath, and maybe that does it, though I keep that other bed pretty consistently moist. But that's my peonies, and you know, they're growing quite well. I'm really excited to see how the Angel Cheeks Peony grows there. It's going to be a lighter, softer color peony than the others that I know the colors of so far. And so I'm really excited to see it bloom. But I'm going to have to wait because, like I said, peonies can take up to 5 years really to really show their stuff. So that's a long goals, long-term planting there. So thanks for watching and learning about peonies with me, and seeing my peonies that I'm growing in my yard and how I planted that one. And I'll do another separate video, so it's not too long, of planting the Heliopsis that I also got in that package. I'm excited to share it with you. Thanks for watching. Bye. Hey. Hey Buster, were you digging in the sand?